Survivability of horror movie killers. Is Chucky survivable? The answer is yes. He is a 2 foot tall doll. Using logic and basic common sense, plenty of horror movie killers are perfectly survivable. I will talk about various killers, including Ghostface, Chucky, and Hellraiser, and how common sense can lead to safety and survival. Leading me to perspective. Have you ever watched a horror movie and thought, why on earth would they make that decision? You're not alone, and you're not wrong. Often victims in horror movies make very, very questionable choices that ultimately lead to their death. Now, yes, this does happen to keep the horror movie going along and simply for the plot. However, common sense can prevent most of these fatalities. Bring me to common sense. Now, according to French author Voltaire, who quoted, "Common sense is not so common," which unfortunately is true. A lot of people lack common sense. Now, according to Britannica, common sense is the ability to think and behave in a reasonable way and make a good decision. Granted, in the middle of a life death situation, panic can set in and can cloud one's judgment, bring to fight or fight, which is induced by stress. In other words, a psycho killer trying to murder you. Now, the body goes into 3 different settings: alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. Now, some people during fight or flight may have quite a judgment or even freeze up, which is why, you see them go up the stairs instead of the front door when the front door is so much closer. Or if they fall and they, for some reason, refuse to get up or don't get up in time, bringing me to Ghostface, my first killer. Now, Ghostface is someone it's always someone you know, and they're driven by fame or revenge. Now, in Scream 96, the original Scream, a character by Randy was at a party and he listed a bunch of rules on how to survive any horror movie. Rule 1, don't have sex. Why? Because you're distracted and you're vulnerable. Rule 2, don't drink and don't do drugs. It lowers your cognites. And now how else are you supposed to fight off a killer when you can barely walk right? It's not exactly gonna happen. Rule 3, never ever say, "I'll be right back." You won't be right back. Now, these are great advice, great tips. However, realistically, abstinence and sobriety is not exactly 100% guaranteed in a party setting, leading to survivability and basic common sense and how you can survive these guys or girls, depending on the movie. So, Ghostface survival, it's a bit tricky because aside from Robin Bridgers, the only singular Ghostface, most of the time it is 2+ people. Most of the recent Scream, when it was a family trio of 3, who honestly needed more therapy. But it does make it a bit challenging, not impossible to survive them. Bring me to the first thing of common sense. Always, always lock your doors. The people that say it's a type of neighborhood, you don't lock your doors, those neighborhoods don't exist, and it's how Netflix true crime documentaries start. It's actually how one of the Netflix movies, Abducted in Plain Sight, started when the victim's mother said, "Well, it's a type of neighborhood, you don't lock your doors." Common sense, lock your doors. Locks exist for a reason. Ranger number 2, they're human, therefore they're not invincible. Now, you can shoot them, you can hit them, but please do it more than once. A lot of times in horror movies, they hit them in the head once and they drop the weapon next to the killer. I don't know what it is about these killers that have the ability to resurrect themselves. So maybe a little gruesome, but you have to do it more than once in order to survive them, which is why I give Ghostface an 8.5 out of 10 in survival, simply because it is usually 2 to 3 people trying to kill you. Bringing me to the next one, Chucky. Chucky is a doll, a child's doll, possessed by the spirit of an enraged serial killer. Now, this serial killer, Charles Lee Ray, he uses black magic to possess Chucky. He does so when he was fatally shot by a detective, did the black magic, possessed the doll, and started on a killing spree. Now, black magic does give him a little advantage, his strength, his killing abilities. It adds to the difficulty of destroying Chucky. However, does not make it impossible. Now, for survivability, I feel like people tend to forget that Chucky is a doll the size of a tiny child. Despite black magic, can be kicked into a fireplace and is made of plastic, very flammable. Their limbs, they're removable. It's a doll. If a toddler can destroy a doll, an adult or a bigger person should be able to destroy Chucky. Now, black magic, not going to stop me from easily tossing him around like a football, grabbing him by a leg, throwing him like a frisbee, which is why I give Chucky a 9 out of 10. One doll. It's a doll made of plastic, 9 out of 10 survivability. One's a little bit more challenging is gonna be this lovely one right here, Hellraiser. Hellraiser is a demonic and feeds off the eternal pain and suffering of his victims, and is summoned by this puzzle cube to be specific. Now, for survivability of Hellraiser, I believe it can go one of 2 ways. 10 out of 10, 0 out of 10. 10 out of 10, it's preventability. See, Hellraiser is summoned by this cube, the ancient cube, that summons him, the demonic entity. Now, I'm someone that does not like to mess with Ouija boards. If I can't mess with the Ouija board, I'm certainly not going to mess with this, which is why I think 100% survival rate, because it is preventable from summoning him and his 2 other little demon friends. Now, if you're in a position where Hellraiser and his demonic entity buddies are summoned, the cube is the key importance of survival. If you can successfully complete this puzzle before they capture you, then they'll be sent back to the realm and you survive. But failing to complete this puzzle in time, especially with stress, you are going to be subjected to eternal torture, pain, suffering, which is what they love, they thrive, and they feed off of. Demonic entities are not friends, which is why I believe that it's preventable if you don't mess with puzzle and similar objects. But if you are caught in situation, unless you're good at puzzles, survivability is minimal. And Hellraiser may be one of the few horror movie killers that have a minuscule amount of survivability. However, summoning him is very much preventable with simple common sense. Don't toy with ancient puzzles, objects. They're hidden for a reason, especially when knowing the lore behind it. Bring me to the last item, which is basically utilizing common sense, logic, and reasoning. It is possible to survive killers in horror movies. After all, Chucky is a plastic doll. Ghostface are people dressed up in cloaks, wearing all knives. Now, Hellraiser may be the only one that's actually challenging to survive, but if you're good at puzzles, you have a good chance of surviving. Now, understand with common sense, it may dip in stressful situations, but keeping a level head keeps survivability high. Smart choices increase survivability, and absent-minded actions guarantee death.